I stood up from my desk and realized the terrifying truth. A man had been curled up underneath it, inches from my legs.
I locked myself in the back office, hyperventilating. I forced myself to look at the security monitor. There is no sound on earth scarier than a doorknob slowly rattling when you know you're supposed to be alone.
If you work the night shift, check your workspace.
Check the doors.
And definitely check the space under your desk.
There is a specific kind of silence that only exists between 3 o'clock and 4 a.m. It's a heavy, oppressive silence, the kind that amplifies every creak of a building and every hum of a refrigerator. If you've ever worked a night shift, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You spend hours praying for something interesting to happen just to pass the time. But when something finally does, you instantly regret wishing for it. Because when you're the only person awake in a building full of strangers, the line between interesting and life-threatening is terrifyingly thin. Here are 4 true horror stories from the night shift that will make you think twice about working alone. Story 1. I used to work the graveyard shift at a small budget hotel about a year ago. It was a modest building, only 3 floors and about 40 rooms in total. We were never busy on weeknights usually. We only had about 10 or 15 rooms occupied. It was the kind of job I liked because it was boring. I worked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., mostly sitting behind the desk, doing paperwork, or watching YouTube on my phone in the back office. The layout was pretty standard. The lobby was small, just the front desk, a few vending machines in the corner, and a lounge area with some couches and a TV. My office was a small room behind the front desk, with a glass window so I could see the lobby while sitting at the computer. At night, the automatic front doors were locked. Guests had to buzz a specialized intercom, and I would press a button under the desk to let them in. This particular night started normally. Around 11 p.m., the buzzer rang. I looked up and saw a man standing outside. I buzzed him in. He looked to be in his mid-40s, tall, average build. He was wearing jeans, a baseball cap pulled low, and carried a worn backpack. He walked up to the desk and asked for a room. I went through the standard script, gave him the price, asked for ID and a credit card. He nodded, didn't say much, and handed over a card. I swiped it through the reader, heard the beep, and handed him a key card for room 214 on the second floor. The only thing that felt slightly off was the way he looked at me. It wasn't aggressive, exactly, but it was lingering. After I handed him the key, he just stood there, staring at me for a solid 4 or 5 seconds, with a completely blank expression. Eventually, he turned and walked toward the elevators. I brushed it off as just another weird traveler, and went back to my phone. Faint hum of hotel ventilation around midnight. I looked up through the glass window of my office and saw him again. He was back in the lobby. He didn't come to the desk. He just walked past and sat down on one of the couches in the lounge area. The TV wasn't on, but he sat squarely facing it, staring at the black screen. I figured he couldn't sleep. It happens. But after 30 minutes, I realized he hadn't moved. He wasn't on a phone. He wasn't reading. He wasn't even closing his eyes. He was just rigid, staring at nothing. At one point, I had to walk out to the vending machine to get water. As I crossed the lobby, I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I didn't look directly at him, but I could feel his head turn. He tracked me the entire way across the room and all the way back behind the desk. It gave me a sick feeling in my stomach, like I was being hunted. Around 1 a.m., purely out of boredom, I started clicking through the reservation system on the computer. I pulled up the current guests list. My heart dropped. Room 214 was listed as vacant. I frowned and whispered, "What the h-?" to myself. I refreshed the page. Still vacant. I checked the check-in logs for the night. There was nothing. No name, no timestamp. I went to the transaction history to see the credit card payment. There was no record of a payment from him. I sat there, confused and sweating. I distinctly remembered swiping the card and hearing the machine beep. But according to the system, this man didn't exist. I picked up the desk phone and dialed room 214. It rang and rang. No answer. Then I checked the keycard entry log. This system logs every time a door is opened. Room 214 hadn't been accessed all night. That meant he had never even gone to his room. I slowly looked up through the glass. He was still there, sitting on the couch, staring at the blank TV. A wave of cold dread washed over me. This guy wasn't a guest. He hadn't paid. He hadn't gone to a room. He had just tricked me into letting him into the building so he could sit in the lobby and ... watch. I debated calling the police right then, but I doubted myself. Maybe the system glitched. I waited another 15 minutes. Finally, Around 1:30, I worked up the courage to walk out to the lounge. "Sir," I asked, keeping my distance, "is everything okay?" He slowly turned his head. His face was completely void of emotion. "I just can't sleep," he said flatly. Then he turned back to the black TV screen. I nodded, retreated to the office, and locked the office door. My hands were shaking. Around 2 a.m., I looked up and the couch was empty. My stomach dropped. I scanned the lobby. He was gone. I stood up and looked toward the hallway near the public restrooms. He was standing there, halfway into the shadows, just watching me. I called my manager at home. She was groggy and annoyed, telling me to just keep an eye on him and call the police if he did anything overtly threatening. I hung up, feeling helpless. Standing in the dark watching a lone employee felt pretty threatening to me. I switched to the security camera monitors. I saw him on the first floor hallway feed. He walked to the end of the hall, stood motionless for 5 minutes, then walked back. Later, he went into the stairwell and just stood on the landing. Every time I looked up from the computer, he was in a different spot. Near the vending machines, by the elevators, in the dark corner of the lobby, always staring at the glass office where I was sitting. By 3:30 a.m., I couldn't take it. I called the non-emergency police line. As I was on the phone explaining that a man was loitering and not a recorded guest, he moved again. He was now standing about 15 feet from the desk, watching me while I was on the phone. He didn't blink. He looked like a statue. At 3:50, the door buzzer screamed, making me jump. It wasn't the police. It was a legitimate guest coming back late. I buzzed him in. As the guest walked through the lobby, the strange man turned his head mechanically, following the guest with his eyes until the elevator doors closed. It was like a predator studying prey. Then, he disappeared again. I checked the cameras. He was standing directly outside a guest room door on the first floor, face inches from the wood, just listening. That was it. I dialed 911 immediately. "He's outside a guest room," I whispered. "Please, hurry." While I waited, he came back to the lobby. He walked right up to the desk this time. He leaned over the counter, his face close to the glass partition. "Do you have any food?" he asked. His voice was so low, it sounded like gravel. "Vending machines are in the corner. ISTAMMERED. He gave a small, terrifying smile. Then he walked away and sat back on the couch. 10 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. I let them in and pointed at the lounge. They approached him, asked for ID, and radioed it in. A few minutes later, he was in handcuffs. One officer came over to explain. "He's not a guest. The card he used was stolen and already cancelled. Your machine probably declined it, but you didn't notice the error message. He has no luggage, no reservation." They arrested him for trespassing and possession of stolen property. As I watched them lead him out, I felt sick. The realization hit me hard. He had been in the hotel for 5 hours. He had tricked his way in with a fake card swipe. He never intended to sleep. He just wanted to be inside, wandering the halls, standing outside occupied rooms, and watching me. I don't know what his endgame was, but I know it wasn't good. Story 2. My name is Meredith. I'm 24, and until recently, I worked the night shift at a tiny gas station off County Road 11. It's the kind of place you only stop at if you're running on fumes or completely lost. I took the job because I'm an introvert. I wanted quiet. I wanted predictable. It started on a humid Thursday night around 1 a.m. The air outside was thick with fog, and the fluorescent lights inside were humming that annoying high-pitched buzz. I was about to heat up a cinnamon roll when the door chime went off. A man walked in, mid-40s, wearing a green utility coat and looking disheveled. He had dry, cracked lips and eyes that looked incredibly tired. He didn't go for the coffee. He didn't browse the chips. He just walked to the counter and stood there. "Hi," I said, putting on my customer service mask. "You always work this late?" he asked. I blinked. Yeah, mostly." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I figured, I've passed through a few times. Noticed, it's always you. That sent a cold spike through my chest. "Small town," I deflected, looking down at the register. He didn't leave. "Meredith, right?" I froze. I wasn't wearing a name tag. We didn't have to wear them on the night shift for safety reasons. Before I could ask how he knew my name, he pointed a finger at the whiteboard behind me, where I'd written the daily special. "You have nice handwriting," he said softly. "Most people dot their I's with circles or just points. You use little slashes. It's very ... specific." Thoughtful. I didn't respond. I just gripped the edge of the counter. He stood there for another minute, just drinking in the sight of me, like he was memorizing my face. Then he nodded. "I'm Paul. Just curious. That's all." He walked out into the fog dot. After that night, Paul started showing up randomly. Sometimes he'd come inside to buy a pack of gum or a water. Sometimes he wouldn't come in at all. He'd just park his car at the far edge of the lot, kill the headlights, and sit there facing the store. One night, I tried to ignore him when he came in. He lingered at the counter. "You're quieter tonight," he said. "Long shift," I muttered, not looking up. He leaned forward, his elbows on the counter. "It must get lonely. Just you, out here in the dark. No one else for miles." "I'm fine," I said sharply. "You ever get scared? Being a woman alone at night?" His tone wasn't aggressive. It was neutral, curious, like he was asking about the weather. I stepped back. "Do you need anything else, sir?" He tilted his head. "You always keep the door to the back stockroom locked." "Smart. I noticed you checked the lock." "Around 2 a.m. almost every night." My stomach turned. I hadn't realized I did that, but he was right. He had been watching my routine that closely. "I'll let you get back to it," he said with that same soft, apologetic smile. "Didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." After that, I started walking to my car with my keys protruding through my knuckles. I kept a tire iron under the register. I checked my apartment locks 3 times a night. There were nights he didn't show up, but that was almost worse. I never knew when he would reappear. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I returned from a 10-minute bathroom break to find a Polaroid photo sitting on the counter. It was a picture of me. I was outside, behind the station, refilling the windshield washer fluid buckets. The photo was taken from close range, maybe 10 feet away through the bushes. There was no note. But on the label of the fluid bucket, in the picture, the letter I in windshield had been circled in red ink. Specifically, the slash mark I made with the marker when I labeled the buckets. The next time he came in, I didn't let him speak. "Leave," I said, my voice shaking. "If you stay, I'm calling the police." Paul just nodded, looking sad. "I get it. I've been too forward." "You've been following me," I snapped. "You're stalking me." "I just thought you were the kind of person who is used to being misunderstood," he said. "I thought you'd appreciate someone paying attention." "That's not attention. That's obsession." He didn't flinch. "Would it be easier if I just smiled and bought a soda? Would I be more normal if I pretended I didn't notice that your shoes are a half size too big? Or that your left eye twitches when you're tired?" I was already dialing 911. He didn't try to stop me. He didn't run. He just stood there, arms at his sides, waiting. When the police arrived, they searched his car. They found a notepad in the glove box. It was filled with dates and times. My schedule. Notes about what I wore. What groceries I bought when I stopped at the store after work. One page just had my name, Meredith, written over and over again in tighter and tighter loops until the ink tore through the paper. He told the cops. "I just noticed things. I'm a curious guy." The restraining order went through that week. I quit the night shift immediately. The company transferred me to a station 2 hours away. I moved out of my apartment. But even now, when I'm driving home on a dark road and see headlights behind me for too long, my throat closes up, and sometimes, when it's quiet, I can still hear the way he said my name. Like he had been practicing it in the dark for a long, long time. Story 3. I want to preface this by saying that this happened just last night. I'm a female, and I've been working the overnight shift at a 24-hour gas station for about 2 months. I usually work weekends, but my coworker, let's call him Max, works the weekdays. Around 2:30 a.m., Max and his friend Ben came into the store to grab coffee and say hi. They were both a little, let's say, altered. They had taken magic mushrooms earlier in the night and were in that giggly, paranoid phase of the trip. Honestly, it was funny at first. But then Ben stopped laughing. He pointed out the window. "That car has been there since we pulled in." There was a dark sedan parked at the far edge of the lot. Lights off, engine running. Ben said he had walked past it earlier and asked the guy inside what he was doing. The guy claimed he was waiting for a DoorDash order. The problem? I hadn't received a DoorDash order in 2 hours. I had been in the back cleaning, so I hadn't seen the car pull in. Max and Ben went outside to smoke and play with Max's dog in the parking lot. I watched them from the window. An hour later, they came back in for refills. Max wasn't giggling anymore. He looked spooked. He told me that for the entire hour they were outside, the man in the car had been watching them. He kept switching between staring at them and frantically texting on his phone. Ben, in his high state, had decided to confront the guy again. When Ben walked up to the window, the driver pretended he didn't speak English. When Ben pushed it, the guy suddenly switched to perfect English, said, "Wrong address," and peeled out of the lot. But here is the creepy part. Max said the car looked brand new, no license plates, and the backseat was piled high with blankets, enough to hide a person underneath. But worse than that, as the guy sped off, another car that had been sitting in the dark corner of the lot, also brand new, also no plates, turned its lights on and followed the first car out. They were working together. One spotter, one blocker. Max stayed with me until 6 a.m. We both realized that if Max and Ben hadn't shown up with a big dog and loitered in the lot for an hour, acting unpredictable, those two cars would have just been waiting for me to be alone. I wished that was the end of it. But tonight, I went back to work. Around 3 a.m., I was mopping the floors when a group of 4 guys came in, contractors, looking for coffee. While I was ringing them up, one of them pointed out the window. "Hey, you know anything about that car in the back? Running with the lights off." My heart stopped. "What car?" "Looks like a new Subaru," he said. "No plates. Looks like 2 guys arguing in the front seat." I told them about the night before. The contractor frowned. He told me that when they pulled up to the pumps, they heard the men in that car talking loudly and pointing at the front doors of the store. When the contractors had walked toward the car to see if they needed help, the Subaru slammed into reverse and sped off into the night. It was the same car. They came back. They waited for the same time. 3 a.m. I don't know who they are. I don't know what they want. But having 2 cars with no plates, waiting in the dark for a young woman working alone, implies something organized, something terrible. I have the next few nights off. I'm praying they move on to an easier target. But I have a feeling I haven't seen the last of that car without plates. Story for my name is Daniel. I'm 29, and I work the night audit at a small rural motel. It's a family-owned place, maybe 25 rooms total. I'm not really a people person, so sitting in an empty building from 10 p.m. to 6 o'clock a.m. suits me just fine. The setup is simple. There's a main lobby with a front desk, and behind the desk is a hallway leading to a back office. The back office is basically a lounge with a couch and a TV. There's a speaker system back there that chimes whenever someone rings the service bell on the front desk. Usually, I sit in the back, watch movies, and wait for the ding. This happened on a Tuesday in late October. It was dead quiet. Around 2 a.m., I was on the couch when the speaker, chirped. Ding. I stood up, straightened my shirt, and walked down the hall to the lobby. Nobody was there. I looked around the lobby, empty. I looked out the glass doors into the parking lot. The road was dark. No headlights, no new cars. I figured maybe I imagined it, or maybe someone ding-dong ditched me. I went back to the office. 10 minutes later, ding-dong, I jumped up and ran to the front, this time trying to catch them. Again, empty. Now the hair on my arms was standing up. I stepped outside into the cold air. I walked the length of the building, shining my flashlight. Nothing, just wind and silence. I went back inside, but this time, I didn't go to the back office. I decided to sit in the chair directly behind the front desk. I dimmed the lobby lights and waited. If someone was messing with me, I was going to catch them in the act. I sat there for 20 minutes. It was so quiet, I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. The building creaked as the temperature dropped. I started to feel silly. I convinced myself it was a prankster who had already left. My eyes started to get heavy. I crossed my arms and leaned back in the chair, staring at the silver service bell sitting on the granite counter about 3 feet in front of me. Just as I was dozing off, dung-ding, my heart slammed against my ribs. I didn't hear a door open. I didn't see anyone walk up. I saw a hand pail with dirty fingernails slowly reach up from underneath the front desk, curve over the granite countertop, and press the button. I scrambled backward so fast, my chair tipped over with a loud crash. I didn't look to see who it was. I bolted down the hallway, slammed the back office door, and locked it. I stood there in the dark, hyperventilating. The front desk has a hollow space underneath for legroom, but it's tight. Someone had been curled up under there, right at my feet. For at least 20 minutes, while I sat there in the dark, I forced myself to look at the security monitor on the desk. On the lobby feed, I saw my overturned chair. Then, I saw movement. A head slowly poked up from behind the counter. It was a man, wearing a dark hoodie pulled tight over his face. He crawled out from under the desk on his hands and knees. He stood up, looking around the empty lobby. He was tall, hunched over. He turned and looked directly at the camera. Then he looked down the hallway toward the office, where I was hiding. He started walking down the hall. I pressed my back against the door, holding my breath. Sound of a doorknob, slowly rattling, the handle turned. Just once, A slow metallic rattle. He knew I was in there. I had already dialed 911 and was whispering to the dispatcher. She told me officers were 2 minutes away. On the monitor, I saw the man walk back to the lobby. He didn't run. He just paced. He walked over to the brochure rack and started casually flipping through a pamphlet. Like he was a bored tourist. Suddenly blue and red lights washed over the parking lot. The man saw them. He bolted toward the side exit and disappeared off camera. When the police cleared the building, they found a large rock propping open the side door. He was gone. I still work the night shift, but I don't sit in the back anymore. And every time I sit at the front desk, I can't help but check the space underneath my feet, terrified that I'll see a pair of eyes staring back at me from the dark.